What up, y'all? My name is Andru, Defeye, a.k.a. the Gorilla Poet Laureate, a.k.a. the Hoodie God, a.k.a. Spittin' Quarantino, a.k.a. I wear my sunglasses at night because my eyes are as sensitive as my heart is, y'all. And we are back celebrating the end of National Poetry Month, and we have a banger for you tonight. I hope y'all have been tuned in all month. We have been talking to young laureates around the country all month long. We've had some incredible interviews, and we are going to continue tonight. So before we get started, I do want to give a shout out to all of our sponsors that have been out here. The Sacramento Bee has been doing some incredible work lately with the Sacramento Equity Lab. So, we started about a year ago to try and make sure that everyone's voices are being heard and represented in the community, and the Sacramento Bee has been working hard at it. So we want to encourage you, writers of all backgrounds and all levels, to make sure you submit to the sacb.com/news/equity lab. And if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up and ask me about those, and I will help get you plugged in. So shout out to them. Also, a quick shout out to the Sacramento Poetry Salon. Y'all make sure that you are tuned into what we are doing. We are trying to create a place to have conversations around equity in the arts, as well as bring you fire performances, contests, and all kinds of dopeness going around. The salon is, it's not just the spot you get your hair done. It's also the spot that you come to discuss ideas, and that's what we wanted to do. So all the arts are welcome at the Sacramento Poetry Salon. So now I think it's about time that we just get into it. You know what I mean? I think we're just gonna wrap up the series right now on a banger note, y'all. We have a very special guest for you. Born in SF, he got his MA at Columbia University. He's the author of award-winning books Someone's Dead Already and Heaven Is All Goodbyes. His latest curriculum on the extrajudicial killing of Black people is called We Charge Genocide Again, and has been used as an educational and organizing tool throughout the country. Now, this is my favorite line of the bio right here. He uses his craft to create liberated territory wherever he performs and teaches. Let's go, y'all. Give it up for Tongo Eisen-Martin. How are you, brother?
Man, I'm good, brother. Thank you for that introduction, man, and that graphic, man.
We out here
right
trying to keep it real stylish with the Poetry Salon. Yeah, so man, thank you for joining us. You are one of these laureates who makes me feel like I don't do nothing. You know what I mean? It's like you and Tama out in Stockton are just always doing something, making me feel lazy. So I appreciate you taking the time. I know Poetry Month is a mad busy month for all of us. I mean, I guess we start off at the beginning. One of my favorite questions is about the superhero's origin story. Where do you start in poetry? How do you get into poetry? What's your origin story?
Yeah, it definitely began with Langston Hughes. Began with Gil Scott-Heron playing in my mother's car. Began with the Last Poets playing in my mother's car. Bay Area hip hop, is what I, just patterned my psyche after. And kind of the really the relentless pursuit of, kind of artistic evolution that them cats was on, also kind of set the standard of how to, at least how to move with a craft. Um, but it just, it's just something that it got me early. Not necessarily not necessarily like a love, but a hostage situation. The lines just wouldn't leave me alone. And so, just fortunately along the way, got to hang out on a couple good pirate ships that schooled me well, and yeah, man, the rest is kind of the credit to everybody who I bounced off of and flow from.
Mm, mm. So, I mean, let's start with like what is the job of a poet laureate in your eyes? What are we supposed to be doing out here? And I might be asking because I need to know.
Man, so far I'm just loving the opportunity, just to get with more public institutions, to bring poet, whether it's like workshops or, some kind of teaching or performing, but to actually interface outside of the ivory tower has been my favorite, my favorite aspect of it, to really make poetry a public works. So I'm
Mm,
just, I'm just whoever, whenever, whatever, will let me in. We're doing things. That's my, and then it's also being run out the San Francisco Library, also using their kind of platforms and resources and personnel. There's some really groovy people at the library, and so kind of just making a little cave there has also been groovy.
I'm like mental note to myself, checking with the libraries.
Tap
Was
in
that
with the
coming in?
libraries, man.
So what is the state of San Francisco poetry right now? I mean, y'all are like one of those cities. It's like San Francisco and New York when you talk about poetry, right? Like, so where's the legacy sitting these days?
Man, we'll whoop New York. Don't worry about nothing, man. New York, come find out what's going on. Yeah, I think the San Francisco poetry scene is. I mean, well, on the one hand, I mean, no, don't get me wrong. We have some brilliant writers running around here, but ultimately, a city's cultural fate is tied to its masses, and San Francisco just has been drained of so many real people,
Mm,
and replaced with a kind of transient upper class. um it inhibits, the art scenes, ironically, because what these what this kind of tech was supposed to come with this, with the tech wave, is like a lot of experimental cultural work and all of this type of thing, and everybody's just trying to reimagine what art can be. But ultimately, if the proletariat is gone, there's only so much the beautiful ones can do.
mm, mm,
So on the one hand, we have some scrappy collectives, and we still have scrappy people left. It's that San Francisco isn't over. But it does exist it does exist in this kind of like shrinking island, that actually you can only do so much with.
and you were born there, so you've seen the entire wave of change that gentrification has brought. I left the city in 2009, and
Mm-hmm.
even going back now, I'm like, yo, what happened to the mission? You know what I mean? Like, it's
Man, shit look like
wild.
Sausalito now.
Right, right, man. So what are your priorities as poet laureate? Do you have like, for me, there's like a required project that, like, I haven't started yet because I've been locked up for the last year.
Yeah,
So we started a poetry salon. We're doing this interview series, so we're doing some things.
yeah.
But are there like big projects that you're set on? Are there a bunch of little things? Kind of what are your plans of attack?
Again, man, just whoever. I'm pretty haphazard, man. I'm not really that Machiavellian. You know what I mean? I'm just like, oh, you want to do something? Let's do it. You all right? Cool. So I'm just just latching on to whoever will kind of host me. Right now, I'm working with a high school and a middle school, and I like both of their potentials. The middle school is the ambition is to, so it's like whole family programming. So it's like parents and their middle school students together writing, and we want to actually expand it to all Black families, middle schoolers, through the city. So that's under development right now, or we've been doing it at a smaller scale. And then working with this beautiful high school, called Downtown High School in San Francisco. They're doing a lot of beautiful work with kids, and so just joining up and just contributing, and I'm just offering myself every day. I think we are going to move when there's only so much you can do till the world truly thaws out, where we're really supposed to be outside,
Right.
But I'm gonna be moving through the local block too, providing programming and this type of thing. So. But I just take like one caper at a time.
Yeah, I feel that itch of like, yo, I'm ready to be out here though. Like I'm ready to actually be in classes again. You know what I mean? Like I bring my own like round of applause when I come to Zoom meetings. You know what I mean? I'll just be like, oh, what's up, y'all? I'm here.
Yeah.
But it ain't the same. You know what I mean? It's just not the same energy.
Yeah.
Let's see. So we coming up on that 15-minute mark, and at 15-minute marks, I have to ask you for poems. Otherwise, the audience just starts roasting me because they're like, Andru, we thought this was about poetry. We thought this was about Poetry Month. What are you doing right now? But before that, the big question, and I'm very interested to see where you land on this, because I've seen you do both. Do you consider yourself a stage poet or a page poet?
Probably both. And interestingly, they almost like two different meditations. You can apply similar tactics to both, but they both kind of have really have just kind of a potential for self-cultivation on their own, and have kind of like rules and physics of their own to explore. So it's both.
Yeah, and I think pretty much everyone who I've interviewed on this series kind of said the same thing. A little bit of both. One comes from the other, one does the other. I think for me, I'm steady trying to figure out how to meld the two. Like, that's the poem that I want to, like, once I've written that poem that I'm like, this is equally fire on the page and the stage, then I'm going to retire and I'm going to be done. But like, until then, that's like what I'm
throw down the hammer like John Henry, man. You've done it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we are hitting that 15-minute mark. You want to take us into our first piece?
Yeah, man. Societies wander together like hopeful drops of a virus. Citizen testaments bent on offering me a nation of breadwinners to hold me back like it's a Brinks. I wrinkle the concrete sometimes like flesh. My Martin Luther King permanence turned away from a podium into the reeds like God is the dangerous twin. Black August to the mountaintop balcony on my bedroom floor. They steal you from the earth itself and suspend you in your broken neck from their foolish euphoria. From the loyalty oaths of their gray superstition, loyalty oath of their agrarian reform, I returned to my mother completely disrespected. For peeling the heat off of purgatory, they kill poets like me. Walk me away from my poems, never to be heard from again. In this final industrial complex of bloodlines picked through a sport and spiritual death, or your devil at least half made, police become a pretty word. I'm reading a lynch mob shoestrings like they were tea leaves, teaching you how to write about cities. It's the 25th century in the mirror, people. Tyranny against your chump, challenging your chump to be mocked even with a gun in your car. Cubit of needlework spelled tuned for the proletariat, the relapse ministry. Talented people curled up in a fetal position next to a diamond dime. Just another service day in the theatrics of tea house fascism in a bouquet of surveillance cameras in the poverty of God. New blue eyes, corpses of water, newly potted presidency, or one big shiny coin if you ask an animated capitalism and other non-literal voids. Killing his white freedom, the deification of hyphens, medicine bread and picture shows. Great protesters in LA, guests of our ink, drop kicking roses in a graveyard, DC Mink like a stone torn in half, the pen advances despite CIA guideposts, despite non-African past and futures, a metaphorical but not surreal day in a horn-ridden life, horn player improvising king like a radio prize fight featuring Shango himself, a real hand sweeps the land of racism. May I return to the ground. May I make progress with the gun. Our mother Emmanuel, you know, they put on music that evening, a swinging type body language for you to drink with fermented $5 bills for your body language, some applause, my past stomach lining, neither a good thing nor a bad thing, like being psychic on the way to a lethal injection. It'll sit you down with Lady Day. Lady Day leading youth who surrendered their souls to Africa too soon. Polity thought floating in a cup of water. She saved me, accessing my stomach, accessing the love of the American lynched. Coat sleeves wooden and avalanching to the wrist. Our mother Emmanuel avalanching to the sharp keys. Pain, the deal you make with pain. A piano makes sense for them. Laying hands on the world gradually, addressing the bend the necks on the streets of the north. Travelers sailing in pain, repeating pain in the north. 10 trigger fingers on that piano if harmony would have me. Putting 100 fights on every direction. Offered her Lady Day, leaning on trees again. Recruiting the countryside itself, saying, lay your plan out on this lightning. Make your poems the corner pocket of men. Now, I've read the blues itself. America may clean my dead body, but will never include me. There goes the poet, killing without killing. Never mind this painting of your language. May I be a meaningful lynching, a crow's passing, good and dead by the afternoon.
Wow. Like, so I was over here typing, trying to catch line. There goes the poet, killing without killing. It's the 25th century in the mirror, people. Yo, like literally. So the comments started flooding in. They said they steal you from the earth itself. That was a line.
Yeah. That's
Georgina, who is the Lake County Poet Laureate, said, hot damn, every line. I'm saying I was trying to like catch this or that. Heather sending the army of hearts.
right on.
Man, yo, like, and what I love too is the presentation as well. You know, a lot. There's a slam voice. You know what I'm saying? Y'all know the slam voice. Tongo does not have the slam voice. I love that shit.
Right on.
So yeah, man, that was fantastic. Thank you.
Appreciate y'all.
So let's see here. Here's one that we've been talking a lot about on this series. So sometimes we write as writers, we just have to, right? Like that's the curse, that's the affliction of like, I just have to get this out of me, and it can't sit inside of me. How do you decide what poems are for you and which ones are for the public?
Yeah, you know, there are poems. It's loose. You know, I keep a kind of almost more of an instinct going than like, you know, a congressional hearing that concludes that this poem right here is the one. You know what I'm saying? But there are just poems that kind of just feel more communal, feel more like, you know, people can kind of sit their psyches in the middle of, you know, could come along for the ride. Then there are poems that just kind of just like feel like they'll be fun to say. And then there are also, you know, there are poems that have like a big effect on you. where you know there's kind of a reciprocal energy that builds between you and the line. Like the line charges you, you charge the line, and on and on and on, and you can kind of go to a place. There are poems like that too that just have a heavy effect on you. That are good to say too. But then sometimes, you know, you might just put a new poem in the mind that's just to kind of balance things out. Like if you like, man, I'm just, you know, it's just I got a whole impersonal kind of sarcastic fleet of poems that are all just, you know, just talking all kind, you know, just making fun of everything. Let's put something personal in here, or you know what I mean, like, or vice versa. In other ways that you can kind of like, you know, try to balance your set out. But it's a growing, it's a living process. The actual selection.
So something else I was super interested in picking your brain about, and I think a lot of, I'm really just interested in how a lot of the young poets and especially the young laureates who've been like put into these positions to like push the legacy of poetry forward. So people come for me all the time because I think Walt Whitman is grossly overvalued and he was racist and a self-hating gay man. Do you feel, I'm not even going to ask you to like publicly comment on Whitman because I don't want to send the armies that come for me coming for you. But do you feel that art should be separated from the artist, or do we throw everything away when we find out, you know, that like folks were super problematic?
That's hard. That's a hard. That's a hard question, man. Because there's other, you know, it's kind of easy to chalk Whitman. There are some artists that'll be a lot harder to chalk, you know,
Right.
who you know, who you can say that's hard, man. I don't have a good I don't have a conclusion, man. Definitely not forgiving any like white supremacist bullshit.
Right, 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 right.
That is definitely not getting a pass. Um, you know, white racism, we're not going for that. But that is, you know, that is I mean, I think it's also instructive though that kind of like that the artists who have like truly gone to the edge of human potential have been ones that, you know, that made their total, you know, that like John Coltrane, who made the total trajectory of his life a kind of like a spiritual seeking, you know, or just, you know, internal cultivation. Um, but yeah, that's I mean that's hard. I'm not really mad at either position, you know,
Mm, mm.
except the white supremacy.
Right, right, right,
I
right,
don't care what I'm not you know, because there's too much genocide that goes with that.
right,
You know
right,
what I
right,
mean?
right.
And it extends from and extends into mass murder and mass and you know and slavery. So you that's not it's inhuman. It's an
Right.
actually it's an inhuman mental position. So I can't, you know, I mean I can't give that a pass.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think so I started a huge controversy on Facebook this last week talking shit about Whitman. And the conversation kind of led to, number one, it led to a bunch of folks talking about my erasure of Walt Whitman, which I was like, hold up, like I'm doing big things out here if I'm erasing Whitman. Um, but just this idea that maybe we should, that like, first off, if we do have these artists who were problematic, that we should teach their problematicness, right? Like hold them accountable after death for who they actually were. And then just the other idea being like, I'm not even saying that we never teach anything Whitman did. I'm just saying he should not be held up as the standard of American poetry excellence. You know what I'm saying? Like Langston lived here,
Right,
Maya lived
right,
here. Like we
right,
have
right.
those examples, and we have more relevant and better examples right now. So that's just something I've been really thinking about and just figuring out how we handle that legacy as laureates. Um, so yeah, we'll have to keep building on
I
that
don't
over
really
time.
people I don't really let them bother me with it, man. I'm not, you know, definitely not beholden to nobody else's pantheon,
Mm,
you
mm,
know.
mm.
And I mean, of all disciplines of art, if there is one discipline that really doesn't have that kind of, uh, you know, cause and effect, doesn't have that series of consequence, you know, where you read a poet, you read some random sarcastic cat in the Roman Empire, and he sounds just like you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's the kind of it's the existence. It's almost the shadowy existence or the ghost-like existence of the poet that definitely defies, you know, again, lineage in that regard. I mean, we do bounce like we bounce off of each other and we get ideas from each other and we push each other, and we also move dialectically in relationship to each other. Like, I'm going to not do what this cat is doing, and things move forward. But you could never say that anyone, like, there's no, like, without this poet there is no tree. And we know that, you know, I mean, and part of the kind of like the over categorization, excuse me, of poetry is a problem both for poets and people, you know, and people who want to listen and listen to it or read it. It really it really throws the compass haywire as far as like what good poetry is and how to get to a good line, and really how to and also how to experience poetry. To look for these to look for categories or impose these kind of like these narratives of evolution really keep the power in the hand, really in a way keeps the power in the hands of the ruling class.
Mm.
Because then it's like, well, who is the true keeper? If Whitman is the seed, well, then who is the keeper of all poetry then? You know what I mean? If he's, you know, if he's their guy. You know what
Mm,
I'm saying?
mm, mm.
You know, in all of these ways, people really justify facilitating poetry, especially teaching poetry, while not actually being able to write a good poem. You know,
Go ahead. Go
like
ahead.
that's the best way to do it. To present it. Oh, look, poetry is this. You know, poetry are these various realms, as opposed to, you know, like, no, there's actually, you know, there's actually a decipherable quantum mechanics in these lines, that have a, you know, that are a kind of like a universal modes of truth
Mm.
in the music to language that we all have access to. Regard, like I said, man, I wasn't, that wasn't even a comedy skit, man. There's literally, I'm blanking on his name, man. There was this super sarcastic Roman poet, you know, or maybe he was Greek, and all he did was make fun of, like, his poems just made fun of the politicians, made fun of the high society, like, you know. And I swear you would think it was you know.
Mm, mm,
um and so it's like there's something beyond these again, beyond these projected stories, that we do best to tap in with, so that we can both be, so that people can actually start writing some better poems, and and also people can benefit from poetry, you know, like brush up against it in a genuine way instead of trying to possess it.
mm,
Because when you
mm.
put it in these categories, where it's like, okay, let me go possess Australian romanticism or whatever. Let me go, or let me go possess the beats. Let me go possess the Black Arts Movement. Let me go, like, you know, and just kind of have this you know, this kind of gimme relationship to art. When it's just really just like allow your mind to intermingle with these various minds and see how your psyche responds. You know, it's you know, it's all really conversational. um
Mm.
But they would, but through through the compartmentalization, that's really how like ruling class hegemony reproduces itself. It's really like it's a strange smoke screen.
Mm, mm. And I mean, it's kind of also like, I mean, it's always, you think about like the great artists, right? Like these are folks who were commissioned by the royalty, and that's why we know them. Is that someone in the royalty
Hey,
was like,
hey,
"Yo,
guess
this is my
what?
boy right
Hey,
here."
guess what? Hey, guess what? You know what, bro? That's where the Laureate thing come from.
Mm,
I looked it
mm,
up. the first poet laureate was basically just a poet who the royal family would adopt in England. That's where the
mm,
position comes from,
mm.
right?
Interesting, interesting. I feel at least a poem coming on. We might have to team up on that one.
Hey, yeah, man. We'll spit a duet, man.
All right, we are at the 31-minute mark. I'm 1 minute late. I know. Stop hating on me in these comments. So we're gonna drop into Tongo for another piece, and then we are going to talk about the writing process.
Well, I go to the railroad tracks and follow them to the station of my enemies. A cobalt-toothed man pitches pennies at my mugshot negative. All over the United States, there are toddlers in the rock. I see why everyone out here got in the big cosmic basket and why blood agreements mean a lot and why I get shot back at. I understand the psycho-spiritual refusal to write white history or take the glass freeway. White skin tattooed on my right forearm, ricochet sewers near where I collapsed into a rat-infested manhood. My new existence is living graffiti. In the kitchen with a lot of gun cylinders to hack up. House of God in part, no cops in part. My body brings down to Christmas. The new bullets pray over blankets made from the old bullets. Pray over the 28th hour's next beauty mark. Extrajudicial Confederate statue restoration. The waistband before the next protest post. Hey, by the way, time is not an illusion, Your Honor. I will save your deaths for last. You are with it, Your Honor. You're moving money again, Your Honor. It's only raining one thing. Non-white cops and prison guard shadows reminded me of spoiled milk floating on an oil spill. A neighborhood making a lot of fuss over its demise, a new lake for a Black Panther party. Malcolm X's ballroom jacket slung over my son's shoulder, the figment of village, a new noose to a new white preacher, all in an abstract painting of a president. They bought slavers some time, didn't it? The tantric screeches of military bolts and election Tuesday cars, a cold-blooded study in leg irons, proof that some white people have actually fondled nooses, that sundown couples made their vows of love over opaque peach plastic and bolt action audiences. The Medgar Evers second is definitely my favorite law of science. Final news clippings and primitive Methodists, my arm changes imperialisms. Simple policing versus structural frenzies. Elementary school script versus even wider white spectrums. Artists bleeding in the challenge of watching civilians think of terrible rituals they have around the corner. They let their elders beg for public mercy. I'm going to go ahead and sharpen these kids' heads in the arrows myself and see how much gravy spills out of family crest. Modern fans of war, well, with their T-shirt poems and T-shirt guilt and me having on the cheapest pair of shoes on the bus. I have no choice but to read the city walls for signs of my life.
And the crowd goes wild. Man, again, just the lines stacked on lines, stacked on lines. Too fast for me to even type them out. Public policing turned structural frenzies. My new existence is living graffiti. And then the spoiled milk floating on an oil spill. Bruh. Wow. So I want to talk writing process because it's National Poetry Month. A lot of people get into get into writing poems during this month, or they're doing the 30 for 30, right? Like,
30.
So first off, like on a poem like that, right? Or these last couple that you've done, how long does that poem take? Are you someone who like kind of spits them out in one take and then revises? Do you put them together line by line as they come to you? What's your process look like?
Yeah, man, it's kind of in waves. So the first wave, I actually don't sit down to write a poem. I just put a timer on 2-3 hours, and then I just write whatever, whatever it comes. And then when it comes time, like usually actually I'm kind of assignment oriented. It'll be some random, like, somebody want a poem for something, and it's like, okay, let me go back in this notebook and fish a poem out of there. Or, I'll have be some deadline like, oh, let me put a book together, this type of thing. Then I'll go back and I'll see where the poem is. And then just start tinkering with it. It's kind of like a poem. Or let me put it like this. It's like we're both vessels of the we're vessels of the universe talking for sure, but we're also vessels of the universe listening. And you can kind of run both. If you run both aspirations at the same time, you actually they actually create a pretty solid poem. I like to think of, and not like, I don't think like, and not in a super desperate way, but I like to think of poems as like each poem is like a person, and that though a person might have like a dominant assertion, a dominant trait, or what you're known for, and this type of thing, you still every person is still full of all kind of other little forces and backstories and this type of thing. So similarly, these poems, again, it might have like a dominant tone, like this is the political rant, or this is the conversation between you and God, or this is the whatever. There's still all kind of stuff going on in there. So as I'm kind of putting poems together, I'm listening at the same time for who this poem is. And then once I catch that, then that moves into the that moves into the more proactive part of my mind. Like, okay, now I see what the threads are, and how to stack it, and and how far I can kind of like deviate, because it's I jump around, but I'm not, even if it's only perceptible to me. There's certain distances I don't go. I'm gonna keep it. There is a bounds there. I'm trying to keep it in, and there are threads that I'm weaving. But yeah, it's and there's probably then like a third round of editing, of editing. There's like there's the first wave of just blah 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 blah, whatever I can, whatever kind of the kung fu gives me. Then there's the like, okay, what is the poem? And then after that, I hit it one more time, just trying to tie up the loose ends, like like some lines that are just kind of like an inside joke between yourself and yourself. I'm gonna chalk those, or see if I can bring them into take them off of Mars and bring them down to Earth. Or sometimes there's kind of ways to like reorganize the poem. Like, nah, this is where this is the line. This is the real true beginning of the poem. It's take that, put it at the top, and then see how see if it changes the kind of like the spine of it. These type of things. I give it one more round, just to make sure that I'm not really make sure that it's not too self-indulgent, and make sure that it's actually not as hard to stretch or stretch for the reader or listener. Believe it or not, as like psychedelic as my thing get, is I really approach it like the reader is my friend, or the reader can understand all this, or that I'm not like I'm really just I'm taking what's actually here in the world, and I'm playing with it, I'm stretching it, but it's still like there's real ground. So it's just like, now this is just my lens, but this lens is potentially yours. So when I go back for that last time, I'm trying to make sure that like that I'm gonna cut what is going too far. Or what is just too big a stress, like unnecessary. So kind of like the lens of the last round editing is really like how I make this ours. make this our poem, as opposed to just, whatever little individual trip or adventure I tend to go on.
I love that it starts out as just this like filterless thing. And it's not even in poem form, that you're not even like, yo, I'm gonna write a poem right now. Cause you write curriculum, you write everything. You're just a writer, right? Like,
Mhm.
so how often, when you say you have these like 2-3 hour sessions where you just like sit down and write whatever's on your mind, whatever kind of form that it comes in, how often are you doing these sessions?
Man, that's supposed to be daily, man. I fall off, but that's any leap and bound my craft ever took always comes down to that
Mm, mm,
doing that, getting it in daily. And it one of the first evolutions was a poetry month. I didn't have the clock on yet. I wasn't stretching it out that long, but it was the poem a day that kind of gave birth to a style that would become the style.
mm,
Uh,
mm.
you know, so yeah,
So
it's the daily thing. That's how it really works.
so if you just starting and you just started doing your 30 for 30, just look where you could end up. You know what I'm saying? Uh,
Real.
Now the big question: what do you do with writer's block?
Oh man, shit. Writing is the art of beating writer's block. There's so many tricks, man. I mean, in a way, that's that's what the I have some actionable intel. You know what I mean? Um, uh, Number one, uh, it's often it's not that there's nothing in our mind. It's what's in our mind we are rejecting, but the
Mm,
power of rejection is not necessarily a terrible or unnatural thing. In fact, the ability to disagree with yourself is very much the basis of intelligence and pushing back on other ideas. Again, in dialectics is how ideas evolve, like this, no, and then and then that, right? And so, but the trick is to short circuit the self-absorption, which a lot of what writer's block comes down to, and the defeat of writer's block is kind of just short circuiting the self-absorption. So what happens is you have actually a natural power of negation, or what can be a constructive power of negation, but you turn it on yourself. So some line jumps in your mind, you're like, that sucks, but then you take it too far, and you're like, I suck, or today sucks, or this is whatever, you know what I mean? Then you go down that rabbit hole. But actually, you can stick right on that line and work it out on the page. So that first line that sucks, you write it down anyway. And it probably does suck. You write it down anyway, and you let the second line negate the first. See, the problem is people write like they never disagree with themselves. And that's just like completely unnatural, you know. So you can bring your nature down onto the page, push back on it, and you can push back on it in different ways. It can be like a hard push, or it can be subtle. It can almost be an imperceptible pushback where the reader might not be able to tell, but the way you wrote it in your mind, you started from a position of pushing back on what just happened. And then once that's done, you can actually, then the next line can be a line that both voices agree on. This will get you out of quicksand. Another way out, because what'll kind of stop us is we just don't feel like it, right? You have some kind of feeling that for you is not conducive. Now this is different from person to person. For some people, they might enjoy sadness or want to write when sad and depressed. For other people, it's like, no, I can't, or anxiety or any of these things that just don't cooperate or don't seem to cooperate with us. Well, what you can do is you can take what you're feeling and just give it to something else.
mm.
So, instead of I am anxious, the door frame is anxious. And you start with an anxious door frame, and then you just start to tinker like, well, why is this door frame anxious, and on and on and on, right? What it does, again, is short circuits the self-absorption. Because then if I start off, I'm anxious, well, now I got to explain to you why, and I got to justify it. And it's going to be a little choppy anyway, right? But if I take this feeling and I just give it to something else, well then I've taken my kind of like I've taken my existential rabbit hole out of it. And you can take anything you're sensing and you can give it and you can give it to something else. You know, you can take the sound of a bird and give it to the city, the city squawks. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So that's, and then there's another thing too, it's just ways of going deeper into a line. Again, like you can take a line that's basic or it just doesn't feel like something spectacular, but within the line there's still kind of implied questions. And you can answer these implied questions with the next line. And this works too, when things are going super well. I think that's what the greats do. If I've noticed anything, it's just like the greats, even when the line is good, they take it a step further and try to just push a little bit more insight out of it. So you can, so like I have a line, I talk facing away from the dead. Now that's cool. I could have left it there. I talk facing away from the dead. I walk, diagonally to the sun. I don't know. I go there, but I said, I talk facing away from the dead. They replace me with the change in my pocket. Right? Pushing it just a little step further. They say you have to know how to cut a throat on the way to cutting a throat. After sleeping on a mattress made from 2 garbage bags of clothes, I became content with the small gestures of plantation fires. I mean, well, I'm gonna stop. but you just you can get more out of what you already have down. And then there's also like just kind of like different ways of slicing your subjects. So one thing that also can be inhibiting is when we find ourselves with the same people. Or in the same place, Well, what happens if you change, So it's like, you in one stanza, you're describing this person at their most powerful, and you tend to describe them like this. Well, now see what happens if you describe them at their most powerless, right? Or just give them just a kind of a different defining relationship, It's all kind. You just go. You can go. There's always another way to get something out of where you've been 1,000 times.
I love that there's unanswered questions, right? Like in the writing, like that's deep. And this we're gonna put up on the screen for y'all because this is so damn important. Short circuit the self-absorption. People write like they never disagree with themselves. Yo, hit the end broadcast. We've done everything we came to accomplish here, bruh. Like that was some of the best advice that I've ever heard for writing. And sign me up for your next class. Like I want to learn to really write poetry.
Man, or we could just chop it up, but see, that's what I'm saying. This don't have to be facilitated with no ruling class sponsorship. You know what I mean? I mean, really what we all need to be doing, all you got to do is just keep a running conversation going in your head about what is poetry. Why, of all the words that we have shared when I was going that one blip, 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 was that the poem, and what I'm saying right now ain't the poem. Right? Just keep figuring it out. Keep figuring yourself out, and you'll begin to codify craft in your own special way. And this kind of sharing of basically what you've learned. We don't need no workshop. We don't need an MFA for that. I could tell you this anywhere. And I have told people this anyway.
Right.
If we really doing it for the sake of growing together as poets. But now if we trying to just grow success, well then it's gonna be like, oh yes, let me make this monetizable, and I can tour this speech around and or I can be adjunct faculty and all this nonsense, But that's just not how art That's not how art evolves. You know what I'm saying?
Mm, mm,
Like when
mm.
them cats was in Minton's Playhouse modernizing jazz in New York, or whatever that club on off of Beale Street in Memphis, when them cats really was, when it was a real killing floor and they was, getting the blues together, or all the hip hop battles in the park, all the battles that created DMX, rest in peace, all the battles that created all of these MCs, it ain't had nothing to do with no school. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right, right.
And I understand though, because poetry is kind of like doesn't have the same kind of existence, the same proletariat existence as music. It's still the same rules apply, you know.
Oh, oh.
And it's really it's really in those trenches where craft really evolves.
And we're gonna touch on that. I'm gonna take a pause break right here. We're gonna take a poetry break real quick because we got deep on the writer's block conversation. But I'm going to come right back to is hip hop the proletariat of poetry? And how do we define that impact? So we'll get back. We'll talk a little bit of hip hop with Tongo. But right now, we're gonna get another poem going, and I'm gonna get out the way.
um, all street life, to a certain extent, starts fear. Sometimes with a spiritual memory, even pre-dawn soul clap, your father dying, even. Maybe I've pushed the city too far. My sensitivities to landfill districting and minstrel whistles, white supremacist graffiti on westbound rail guards all overcome and reauthored. Reauthored by revolutionary violence that chose its own protagonist or a muted stage of genius. The garbage is growing voices. Condensed Marxism for warrior depressives, underpasses in their pockets because they just might be deities or decent bid on the panther name. A merciful Marxism. Disquieted home life, a metaphor for relaxing next to a person who is relaxing next to a gun. I stare at my father for a few seconds, then return to my upbringing. Return to the souls of Ohio black folk. Revolution down there pagan at this point. You know what the clown wants? The respect of the ant. Wants to interpret pain only. Wants to pull a 38 out of a begging bowl. Wants me to hurt my hand on this pen. I'm not tired of these rooms. Just tired of the world to give them a relativity. My only change of clothes prosecuted. The government has finally learned how to write poems. Shootouts that briefly align, that make up a parable or parables. Parables like white bodies are paid well. Or do white men even have leaders? Are all white people white men? A rat pictures a river. Can almost taste the racial divide. Can almost roll a family member's head into a city hall legislative chamber. Knows who in this good book will fly. All I do is practice, Lord. Decided not to talk out of anger ever again. Met my wife at the same time I met new audience members for our pain. We passed each other cigarettes and watched cops win. A city gone uniquely linear, Harlem of the West, do a true universe. I'll always remember you in fancy clothes, my wife said. So here I sit, twisting in silk ideation. Rifle made of postbellum targets made of an honest language. This San Francisco poetry is how God knows it is me whining. Riding among the lesser respected wolves, lesser observed militarization. Dixie list prison bookkeeping, the California Great Coast are coming. Lynch mob gossip and bourgeois debt collection, it's tempting to change professions mid-poem. In a Chicago briefing, a white sergeant saying blank slate for all of us after this black organizer is dead. Standard academics toasting $2 wine at the tank parade. Babe, nothing, Lord, just nuclear cobblestones, gun line athleticism, and the last of the inherited asthma. Children giving white dolls to play with in fear. Facial expressions borrowed from rich people's shoestrings. I can hear hate and teach hate and call tools by people names and name people dead to themselves. No one getting naturalized except federal agents soon. Carving the equator in the throat soon. I'm sorry to make you relive all of this, Lord. All of this pre-dime monarchy, friends putting up politician posters and snorting the remainder of the pace, minstrel script shoveled into the walls by their elders, my children sharpening quarters on the city's edge. For these audiences, I project myself into a ghost-like state. For these gangsters, I do the same. Every now and then, take a nervous look east, sleep becomes Christ, sleep starts growing a racial identity. Do you ever spiral, Lord? Has the gang age betrayed us? Be patient with my poems, Lord. So much pain is a point to crime. It has to be if race traders come with it. Lord, is that my revolver in your hand? No better presidents than these of yonder cages have called us holy slaves. Fill the school libraries with cop documentaries, baby. I don't have money for food. Shit, I don't have a present moment at all. Man. Oh, I can't hear you, bro.
There we go. There we go. I'm back on. You know what I love is the way that the comments light up as soon as you start reading, because everyone's doing the same thing I'm doing, trying to catch like what was that line that I liked so much. Lord, is that my revolver in your hand? Yo, Georgina said the garbage is growing voices. Fire. This one too. I was trying to write that one down. Man. So I want to talk about, we were just discussing the proletariat of poetry, and you're really influenced by Bay Area hip hop, same way I am. I would say mine's just a full West Coast. I'm a little less Bay Area because I grew up in Southern California, but the Bay, like, that's where I touched my first stage as a hip hop artist, was in San Francisco. Shout out Club 6 back in the days.
Oh,
if you
man,
know, you know.
Wow, Club 6, man. Rest in peace, Chuck, man. Chuck, who ran security there, man. Wow, man.
Yeah, that was my spot back in the days. So I want to talk about
You probably ran across my brother in there.
I'm sure I did. So, like, what role does hip hop play? First off, let's just start there. Is hip hop the proletariat poetry?
I don't know if I call it the proletariat poetry. There's been, because there have been strands of other kinds of poetry that have stayed just as close to the ground as hip hop did, and you even got arguments that the last poets are the are in the Godfather realm when it comes to hip hop. It's definitely I think its baseline is rooted in the mass imagination, and can only kind of like can only be taken so far from the sun. But yeah, I don't know if I wouldn't take away from some of the I wouldn't take another rest in peace. I wouldn't take away from Mums the Schemer. Whatever hip hop is, Mums the Schemer was. you know what I'm saying? I wouldn't take nothing away from Jessica Care Moore. Talking about poetry that's really fire, that really lives with the people. You know what I mean?
Right.
So now though, along the way, I think kind of the ruling class tries to reproduce its legitimacy by taking some poets and making them their ornaments. I think poetry never leaves the people, but definitely as far as just like kind of mass impact poetry, I mean rap is definitely, hip hop is definitely the as the people's champ, is the reigning has been holding down the decades. I mean, because it really gave us a total experience to swim around in, man. I mean, that really saved us, bro. I mean, really saved. Imagine trying to swim around this without, or imagine if we didn't have this complete, this all dimensions covered. You know what I mean? To grow our intellects through. Imagine if we didn't have this as a subject of conversation. If cats didn't have hip hop as a subject of conversation, It's like, especially as this, because the world was just getting faker and faker. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? The world was getting like, I mean, there's this interesting documentary on Ronald Reagan, man. It doesn't it's interesting because it's not like all kind of analysis. It's just literally showing what was going on, and basically it was really just theatrical. It was really just a television show. You know, he basically it was just a film formula that he was running. You know, and then obviously, and so it was obviously just a puppet. You know. So it's just like, you know, from the 80s on, there, you know, the world was really getting more and more shallow and insane, you know, and more violent, and you know, so well, maybe not more violent, but in a way, you know, culturally, violence became more like your like proof of your existence is your capacity for violence, right? Hip hop really, you know, gave our souls and our minds, you know, something to dance with in a way that what you know, what else could we, you know, what else could we have bonded over, and at the same time just you know, just being a complete you know, rejection of Leave It to Beaver aesthetic, you know what I mean? Like, so it's just, you know, man, you know that I mean that you know, hip hop is indeed a deity, you know, and definitely has held down. I mean, I know it gets it gets problematic on the other end. You know what I'm saying? I know, like, but really though, like, what else did we, you know, what else did we have?
Right. Well, and so you're a real player out here. I saw you with the guitar on the gram the other night, and I was like, oh, he like really plays, not like he ain't strumming power chords over here. You know what I mean? What relationship do poetry and music have in your life?
Man, music for me is like it's an interesting. It's just it's another meditation, you know. And it held me down. Actually, like I haven't been playing for that long. Basically, I got in a car accident like 6 years ago, and it really took my arm out. And at the time, I kind of, you know, I was more like I had a physical existence, you know what I'm saying? As far as just keeping in shape and, you know, and you know, enjoying physical expression in that way. Well, being completely you know, sidelined by the car accident, I kind of needed something for my hands to do and some way to express myself physically. And so that's why I picked up the guitar. And but then, you know, man, along the way, just brushing up against that kind of emotive math has definitely been had an expansive effect on my consciousness, you know. And also, you know, when you start playing music, you see how good these cats that you enjoy actually are. Like, you see how mind-boggling, you see how impossible Jimi Hendrix is. You get a sense of kind of like, you know, you get a sense of harmonic potentials, and you see how impossible John Coltrane is, you know, like it helped, it gave me a more critical relationship to just listening to music as well. So along the way, I mean, I'm to tell you the truth, I'm not sure all the ways exactly how they have mingled, but it's definitely in the synthesis. I think what's different is, or where it's kind of hard to draw, you know, to draw too many parallels, is because You know, music has a martial art to it, literally, your hands doing things, you know, and has this kind of like, and also has this physical experience that we can all agree on. Like, no matter what you call it, the C note is that whatever, how it's vibrating it. You know what I mean? We all hear the same thing. But because poetry is just super internal, it's all in the mind, you know, we don't have that same kind of like relativity. And it's this relativity that all, you know, all this music is kind of based on, or a lot of the kind of realities of music are based on these apparent patterns. You know what I'm saying? Poetry, it doesn't have this, and it's not necessarily good for your sanity to try to make kind of the same equations out of poetry that you can make out of music, you know. But there are certain, but there are tendencies. There are kind of like, there are certain tendencies to both, and there's definitely ways of kind of that teach you how to hold yourself. Back to the you're both the universe talking and universe listening. Definitely when you're playing, you're, you know, you're really being affected. It's really like a note influences the next, like, so it's just like your ears is open, and maybe that's how I stumbled onto that kind of like approach, because it's like when you're playing, you are really damn near dead center of and constructing what you're doing by both calculating and listening and being influenced, you know, and it just on it goes.
And I mean, while we're talking about the greats and these virtuoso musicians, I would be remiss if I did not mention your work with Damani Rhodes and crew.
Man.
For those of you in Sacramento, if you do not know Mino Yancey, you need to know Mino Yancey. Sacramento's sweetheart jazz, fusion, funk, soul, anything that Damani feels like being at the moment. Like, tell us about that project. How did you come into working with them? What is this project? How do we get it? When do we get it?
Yeah, so man, it was kind of a it was the generosity of others, man. You know, basically this cat named Mark Bamuthi Joseph, a poet and his beast, you know.
Shout out.
Shout out to Bamu. He put us on the same gig, and not just on the same gig, he put us in this section of this show. And so we rocked together for this show, and it was just like, you know what? You know, now, to be real, I'm not gonna say I've been stalking them, but I already knew who they were. You know what I mean? I already knew who they. I was like, you know, I already knew who they was. So I seen them a couple times and was just like, whoa, what manner of beast mode is this? So we, you know, they just tapped in after we did that gig, and it was funny. Damani had hit me and was like, you know, come on, we got this. I think they had like a residency at the Zoo Labs. It was like, come to Zoo Labs in West Oakland, and let's do something. And when I pulled up, he got on the phone with me like, oh, bro, we had to go do a quick set at the Fox, but the engineer is in there. There's like 5 or 6 instrumentals we made there. Just go in there, pick whatever one you want, and just record something. You know, we'll try to get back as fast as possible, you know. So I'm up in there, man, and me and the engineer, and they were all slaps, you know. So I said, man, I said, fuck it, man. I'm just gonna take every single one. So just recorded. I sliced every one of them, you know, and man, they were all cold. And so there's the song that we got out now, titled "Not a Poem." It's on, it's on Spotify, it's on Apple Music, iTunes, and all of this. It's in rotation now. That's actually just one of we already got an EP locked in. We're just thinking now, it's just now a matter of like, well, what's the best way to proceed, and then we always have the potential to record more, so it might be a whole album, man. But yeah, man, those cats are we played some gigs too, man, that were really just like it's beyond a treat to work with them. It's really dynamic music. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like just how like you feel about the lines, like that's how it's like, God damn,
I've often described Mino Yancey when I tell people like, "Oh, you want to come out and see this band?" I go see them every time that I see them playing anywhere in town, and you want to come see Mino Yancey? What's Mino Yancey? I said it's the kind of jazz that you have to yell at.
Yeah.
Like they'll be playing and then they hit one of them switches and I'm like, oh shit. Like you can't help but yell at them when they're playing.
It's ridiculous, man.
Yeah, it's some real next level like
alien shit. Like somebody shouldn't be that good. It shouldn't, let alone four of them.
Well, and what I really liked about it, and I won't like sidetrack too much, but when I talked to Damani early on, when Mino Yancey had just started, was he said, "This is so I've been producing, I've been playing for other people, I've been writing for other people. He's a virtuoso and been involved in the music scene out here." But he said, "Mino Yancey is the music that I always heard in my head that I was too afraid to put out there for people." And I was like, wow. And I took that and like internalized that lesson of like, no, do the thing that's in your head, like figure out how to get it out into people because you never know when you're just going to shift someone's whole perspective and paradigm. Because when I went and saw them the first time, I was like, oh, folks are still like doing this kind of like this feels like watching Coltrane. This feels like watching Miles. This feels like what that must have been like.
Yeah. Bottom line.
So before we get out of here, I'm going to have you do one more. But before that, most influential Bay Area hip hop artists.
Damn, man.
And I mean for you personally, not just for like
for me. Man, that's rough. That's hard too.
I know it's not a fair question.
Allow me to make an attempt, man. I think the first cat that really sparked me, like the first song that kind of like where I felt like was the kind of the pocket that I kind of operate out of was Spice One, East Bay Gangster. Listening to that one, that was the one I had on repeat that really kind of just like felt like where my mind likes to operate.
Spice One is super underrated.
Man, I've been running around trying to tell cats too, like, man, on Element of Surprise, E40 is in the deepest bag, man, that you can achieve, man. You know, that like 999 plus one, that's a deep zone right there. Like I guarantee you, like if Aretha Franklin might agree. Nina Simone might agree. That's a deep bag he was in. In the E40 and the Click days. Of course, the Jackson, rest in peace.
Again, another one that I'm like, yo, the Jacker Lightweight started all of this melody and hip hop stuff, y'all.
All right. You can make that bet. Mac Dre for sure. Frisco rappers too. Selsky had a huge that song "Stressed Out." Selsky's "Stressed Out." I think it was on the Herm Lewis tape, man. That whole tape, But Selsky "Stressed Out." That also was kind of like my pocket. I felt like. And he was super virtuosic on some lyrics. Rest in peace, Cool Nut.
Right.
IMP. Of course, RBL. what, you know, 3 times crazy, Looney
Right,
Corleone.
right,
He's in
right,
a deep
right.
bag too. You know, this is because these Bay Area rappers really be in a real bag, man. Really operating from a really high powered place.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and then you can't say the Bay without saying Too Short or the Loonies, man. I miss those days, man. You know, I miss when the conversation was not about like who sucks and how much it sucks. You know what I mean? When it was just like, well, who's just better? But they were all, but everybody was all good. And maybe
Right,
that's just like a younger person's conversation. You know, maybe the older you
right.
get, you naturally get grumpier and grumpier. But like, yeah, man, there were kind of just like vibes, man, that I definitely that I might just be patterning myself after.
And I just think about that culture, the Bay's hustle culture, the entrepreneurial culture of hip hop in the Bay was something completely different than anywhere else. And like that still informs so much of what I do as an artist and just the way I approach things. Like I always got to remind my kids, like, nah, we used to stand on the street corner and rap for strangers on some like, yo, if you like this, buy this little CD I got. If you don't like this, you could punch me in the stomach. Like that was the only way we were gonna sell CDs in the Bay. You know what I mean? Like, um, so it definitely is a culture
And
out
then,
there.
you know, man, that self-esteem, that collective self-esteem.
Mm,
I mean,
mm,
don't get me wrong. I used to listen, but I loved Wu-Tang Clan. I loved the first two Nas albums. You know, I loved Big. You know, and damn, man, we didn't even bring up Pac. Pac for sure was also a major vibe.
right.
But you know, what I think why the Bay, you know, is a great, can really take a lot of the credit for kind of my confidence as a poet is that, you know, you don't need anything but hear you know, collective agreement. You know what I mean? Where we don't look up to nobody here. We're not trying to be like anybody else. And so whatever experiment you want to run, and we are some experimenting mother, you know, right? Whatever experiments you want to run is what they do, you know. And that's definitely all in the DNA of how I get down.
Mm, mm. So you want to take us out with one last piece?
Yeah, I got you.
Do it.
Um, in conclusion, um, no, a lot of God can happen in 3 seconds. Not much heaven though. You know, here is a man before a fight, a leave me alone type character, emerging from the penniless death of a one-way street fiction. Is a fancy way of saying I'm going to make it, even if I have to drive backwards. All I have is chord changes and 1,000 backhands. Driving the street like I'm choking it. Car full of nephews. There hasn't been a sun since November, and there hasn't been a street I can't choke to death. This city better back down. You see this gun on the table? And something about staring until it all feels stable. Why wouldn't I protect everyone? All my death sleep late. My son better be quick. My daughter better shoot first because we fall for no one. You know, we fall for nothing. Okay, the first thing you'll feel is the heat. This lady would tell me, trying to tell me about possession. Drink life need is what I mostly hear. And most of the world leaves me alone to breathe smog like a giant, to go to jail every once in a while. When the genocide kicks up in late May, when politicians have too easy a time, I'm gassing backwards out of one-way street in honor of myself and in honor of you, you know, if you understand the nature of the world. And how long I've been just like my father. One hell of a resemblance says the anxiety of the neighborhood. This is a crossroads or a crossroads narrative of so much crossroads, people get in the habit of turning back. Turn back only to find themselves remembering me, but not my last words, a man before a fight. You'll feel the heat. But there's nothing to keep in mind. You know, there's nothing to remember. Really, there's nothing to be. It's just this moment, then another, then stare, then it all becomes stable. Then the table legs go fuzzy, and Friday's an unfamiliar face peeking in the window. It's cool to panic for a second, Composure is wasted on your worst enemies. People are marked on that sidewalk. You the only thing life size. Everybody knows this in a wire hanger empire. When the blood stops walking, that feeling isn't father enough to be permission to fold. You better swing one more time. You know, that father of yours rose from the grave and said, just give me 5 more minutes. He said, running water is a myth. It's us who are running up, down, and all alongside this water. And people don't rise from the grave. They're not laid down neither. It's us who flip all around their bodies. So beware when the people around you all look like they about to jump. It might be your time. You'll feel the heat. And when 4 walls demand to be 4 walls and the earth outside mutes, don't panic. You know, don't try to recreate the earth outside. Don't tell jokes to yourself. Don't even talk disrespectfully to the 4 walls. Instead, unclench your fist and walk away. There might be heaven if you understand the nature of the world. Yeah, that's it.
Damn it. From jump. He said a lot of God can happen in 3 minutes. Not a lot of heaven, though. Come on. And what I love that you made it just in time. Tama from Stockton, the Stockton Poet Laureate, Mama Tama jumped in. Tama, at the top of the show, I actually mentioned that you and Tongo are the laureates that make me feel incredibly lazy because you're always doing so much. So you got a little shout out at the beginning of the show. He must have felt us when we were setting off the satellite for you. Yeah, man, thank you so much for being here, for sharing all that work. And we are definitely going to have you back on at the Poetry Salon and just continue some of these conversations. I think, man, like we touched on so many things, and I feel like we could go for another hour and a half, maybe 2. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully, when the world thaws out, I can come out there. I'll first round's on me. You know what I'm saying? Tama, you invited too if you want to come out.
Yeah. Let's all bring it all together now.
Absolutely. Any last message that you want to give, folks? We got the entire city of Sacramento tuned in right now.
Nah, man, just much love to everyone. It's just unity time, for everyone. We are, I'm not like an evangelist or a doom and gloom, or I'm really not even a dramatic type cat. You know what I'm saying? I'm pretty laid back, but it does feel, man, if you look around, man, it does feel like we're in a kind of a change of epoch, man. Even in a, kind of just a political sense alone, not even with the spiritual connotations, And so where the kind of human journey goes now is going to depend on how critically we all enter the historical process. And we are only critical in the historical process when we're unified, man. So, I just say, man, let's all just make unity make unity the main course, and let the rest kind of take care of itself. So just much love to everybody. Stay safe, and gather responsibly. Not then, you understand what I'm saying. Again, when it's safe to. But put your hearts in the position of unity.
And I think this message means that the second round is on Tama. So I got the first one. She buying the second one. She said, "Tongo, put those words in a lunch pail and make them work." The city.
Hey. Right on.
So, I think that's gonna wrap us up. Again, like I said, we're gonna have Tongo back, probably a whole lot. For the Sacramento Poetry Salon, and then have him back out here as soon as we start meeting again, as soon as we start throwing down on the street corners out here. We definitely gonna have to have Tongo come through one time. So just again, thank you so much and thank you to all of our sponsors that made this happen and helped us really get this out there to as many people as possible. And shout out to all of you who tuned in and made this such a thing for Poetry Month. It was beautiful. You know, in Sacramento here, we broadcasted out to over 262,000 people every time that we did this, and we did this 6 times this month. So we put poetry in a lot of people's faces this month, and I'm really proud of my city for doing that, and for everybody that was involved in this. So thank you. And for Tongo, my name's Andru Defeye, and I love you, and you can't do shit about it.